Tensions between the United States and Iran are reaching a dangerous breaking point, with the Strait of Hormuz at the center of a growing global crisis. Former President Donald Trump has issued aggressive warnings, demanding the reopening of the vital oil route, while reports suggest possible U.S. strikes on Iranian infrastructure, including power plants and bridges. Iran, however, remains defiant, claiming the U.S. underestimates its military strength and warning of severe regional consequences if the conflict escalates. As threats intensify and deadlines expire, the world is watching closely, because what happens next could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East and beyond. Today we will talk about Trump loses his temper. Open the fucking strait. So before we start, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. The escalating confrontation between the United States and Iran has entered a volatile and unpredictable phase, marked by increasingly aggressive rhetoric, mounting military pressure, and growing concerns over the potential for a wider regional conflict. At the center of this crisis is the strategically critical Strait of Hormuz, a narrow but vital waterway through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes. The stakes surrounding its control and accessibility have transformed it into both a geopolitical flashpoint and a symbol of the broader struggle between Washington and Tehran. In recent days, tensions have surged following a series of provocative statements and reported military considerations attributed to U.S. leadership. President Donald Trump has reportedly issued blunt and forceful warnings to Iran, demanding the immediate reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. His language, described by observers as unusually heated even by his standards, reflects mounting frustration within the U.S. administration over Iran's defiance and the global economic implications of the disrupted oil flow. Iran, for its part, has effectively closed the strait in response to joint U.S. and Israeli military actions targeting its territory earlier in the conflict. Tehran views control over the strait as both a defensive measure and a strategic lever, allowing it to exert pressure not only on the United States but also on global energy markets. Iranian officials have repeatedly insisted that their military capabilities are underestimated by Washington, while warning that any escalation will trigger consequences far beyond the immediate theater of conflict. Reports from within U.S. policy circles suggest that the administration is weighing a significant escalation in its military strategy. According to sources familiar with internal discussions, advisors have proposed targeting Iranian infrastructure, including power plants and major transportation routes such as bridges. These targets, while often considered civilian in nature, are being framed by some officials as legitimate military objectives due to their role in supporting Iran's missile and nuclear programs. The idea of striking such infrastructure has reportedly gained traction among key figures in the administration. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is said to be among those supporting the approach, arguing that crippling Iran's logistical and energy networks could weaken its ability to sustain military operations. Proponents of this strategy believe that applying pressure on critical infrastructure could force Tehran back to the negotiating table, particularly if it significantly disrupts the country's economic and military capabilities. However, the proposal has sparked intense debate both within the United States and internationally. Critics argue that targeting civilian infrastructure risks violating international humanitarian law, which places strict limits on attacks that could disproportionately harm civilian populations. Legal experts and human rights organizations have warned that such strikes could constitute war crimes, especially if they are carried out primarily to coerce political concessions rather than achieve immediate military objectives. This debate has been intensified by reports of a recent U.S. strike on a bridge connecting Tehran to the nearby city of Karaj. According to U.S. officials, the bridge was being used to transport military equipment, including missiles and drones, making it a legitimate target. However, Iranian sources claim that the attack resulted in civilian casualties, further fueling accusations that the United States is crossing ethical and legal boundaries in its conduct of the conflict. The broader context of these developments is a conflict that has been steadily escalating since late February. What began as a series of targeted strikes and retaliatory actions has evolved into a sustained campaign involving multiple domains, including air, sea, and cyber operations. Iran has responded by launching attacks on oil and gas infrastructure across the Middle East, signaling its willingness to expand the scope of the conflict and target regional allies of the United States. At the heart of the crisis lies a deep and persistent mistrust between Washington and Tehran. Efforts at diplomacy have repeatedly faltered, with both sides accusing the other of acting in bad faith. While U.S. officials have at times suggested that negotiations remain possible, Iranian leaders have consistently denied that meaningful talks are taking place. This disconnect has only widened the gap between the two sides, whilst making a diplomatic resolution increasingly difficult. Intelligence assessments reportedly indicate that Iran believes it holds a position of strength in the current standoff. This perception is reinforced by its control over the Strait of Hormuz and its demonstrated ability to disrupt regional energy infrastructure. Iranian leaders appear to calculate that these factors provide them with sufficient leverage to resist U.S. demands and withstand economic and military pressure. At the same time, there are indications that Tehran doubts the sincerity of U.S. overtures toward diplomacy. Analysts suggest that Iran views the repeated issuance of deadlines and threats as evidence that Washington is more interested in coercion than negotiation. This perception has contributed to a hardening of Iran's stance, reducing the likelihood that it will make concessions under pressure. The international community is watching these developments with growing alarm. The potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz has significant implications for global energy markets, with the risk of supply disruptions leading to price spikes and economic instability. Countries heavily dependent on oil imports are particularly vulnerable, and many have called for de-escalation to prevent a broader crisis. Meanwhile, regional actors are bracing for the possibility of further escalation. Iran's warning that severe consequences could spread across the entire region if the conflict intensifies underscores the risk of a wider war involving multiple countries. The Middle East's complex network of alliances and rivalries means that even a limited escalation could quickly spiral into a much larger confrontation. Within the United States, the situation has also sparked debate over the appropriate course of action. Some policymakers argue that a strong military response is necessary to deter Iran and protect global energy security. Others caution that escalating the conflict could lead to unintended consequences, including a prolonged and costly war with uncertain outcomes. Public opinion appears to be divided, reflecting broader concerns about the risks and costs of military intervention. While some Americans support a firm stance against Iran, others are wary of becoming entangled in another conflict in the Middle East. Whilst this domestic debate adds another layer of complexity to the administration's decision-making process. As the situation continues to evolve, the coming days are likely to be critical. The expiration of various deadlines issued by the U.S. administration could serve as a trigger for further action, depending on how Iran responds. Whether this leads to renewed efforts at diplomacy or a sharp escalation in hostilities remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that the conflict has reached a point where miscalculations could have far-reaching consequences. The combination of military pressure, economic stakes, and political tensions creates a highly volatile environment in which even small incidents could trigger a broader escalation. For now, the world watches closely as two adversaries edge closer to a confrontation that could redefine the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East and beyond. The outcome remains uncertain, but the consequences of further escalation could be profound, affecting not only the region but the global economy and international security for years to come. If you liked this video and would like to see more like it, please give it the thumbs up. Leave a comment and click the button to subscribe.